It's been said that with careful planning, wise spending, and a strictly scheduled savings account, a 5-year-old might just manage to save $1 million by the time they're 100. Okay, so it's actually more like someone making 50 grand a year, saving up a carefully calculated amount per day to have $1 million to retire with. $1 million just feels unattainable. Imagine that though, $1 million to live the rest of your life in relative comfort with. It wouldn't be a whole lot when you factor in the fact that it'd be spent over 20 to 30 years. It'd just be about 20 to 30 grand a year, but it's still better than my IRA, that's for sure. Unfortunately for most people, the usual salary is more at that $20,000 a year mark. And with an overwhelming 78% of America alone living paycheck to paycheck, saving has shifted from what was once practically an expected certainty into a mere luxury. We've all got our own win the lottery dream. Pay off the mortgage, buy an island, but what would happen if everyone suddenly had $1 million? Or at least their currency's equivalent of it. You get $1 million and they get $1 million and everyone gets $1 million. Oprah jokes aside, what would that even be like? Would life be awesome for a whole lot of people? Would we end world hunger? Or would the economy simply collapse under the influx? Stay tuned and keep watching this video for one possible answer to this burning question. But before we begin, if you like what you see, then feel free to drop a like on this video and hit up that subscribe button. You can ring the notification bell for a chance to be the first one to be notified about new content posted to the channel. Without further ado, let's get this party started. I'll just come right out and say it. Chances are that you, the person watching this video right now, are poor. I know. That was kind of rude, and you probably didn't need to hear it from a total stranger. But let me explain. I'm not making fun of you. It's just a statistical probability. The average salary of the world as a whole is something like $1,400 a month, or 18 grand a year, which most of us know is basically nothing. But sadly, that number can vary greatly based on where you live. The highest paid country on average is Monaco at just about 15 grand a month and over 100,000 a year. Man, I bet it wouldn't be so hard to save up $1 million there. But it'd be next to impossible for the average person living in Madagascar. At only $400 a year, or about $33 a month, that leaves residents with mere pennies over $1 a day. If everybody in the world suddenly got handed $1 million, life might not change so drastically for a high earner in Monaco. But for those scraping away in third world countries, that would be a very large and welcome surprise. Unfortunately, statistics show that chances are that money would most likely be mishandled. Take lottery winners as an example. Winning the lottery is usually considered the ultimate stroke and good luck. But ask someone who's actually hit pay dirt, and they'll probably tell you it's anything but. After all, money is the root of all evil, or so they say, whoever they are. But financial experts say that 70% of people who come into an unexpected large sum of money lose it within just a few years. Overspending and undersaving are usually the express route to bankruptcy. So if everyone in the world suddenly had $1 million, most of us would spend it faster than you could say Bob's your uncle. I mean, $1 million doesn't go as far as you think. Sure, with $1 million you could afford to have your new Lamborghini coated with one sweet chrome paint job. You can enjoy a 6-course meal in your own private room at one of the most expensive hotels in the world, the Burj Al Arab in Dubai. Or if shopping is more your thing, you could practically buy out the clothes section of a Walmart. Then there's the vampire facial, which is a $1,500 promise for youthful, healthy skin. And yes, it's as gross as it sounds. Of course, while you're at it, you could also buy yourself a plane or rent a super yacht. What's $500,000 a night when you have $1 million in the bank? That would be half, actually. And it's exactly that kind of excited rush of spending that would crush anyone not paying careful attention to their finances. But let's face it, what most of us really want to do is quit that dead-end job. A recent poll suggested that as much as 85% of people didn't feel satisfied at their current place of work. Let's give a conservative estimate and say that if everyone suddenly gets $1 million, that 70% of people would outright quit their jobs. That is a huge chunk of the workforce, about 5 billion people. I have a hard time when someone calls in sick too often. Without the vast majority of the world's workers actually doing, well, work, it'd be pretty much impossible to continue to produce the many goods and services that we take for granted every day. You think someone picking your avocados for basically pennies an hour is going to keep that up if they have their own million? Heck no. Of course, there would always be those individuals who chose to stay at their jobs or find new, more fulfilling work, like starting their own company or working with kids or creating a puppy sanctuary. But overall, the lack of skilled workers would mean a significant rise in the prices of darn near close to everything, from cars to houses to groceries. Even a massage would cost more. If you think gas is pricey at $4 a gallon, imagine how much it would be if no one had the monetary incentive to drill for it, or transport it, or pump it. Plus, new businesses and people spending like crazy might sound like a good idea on paper, but businesses need workers, and they wouldn't be able to pay for them. And that's because the value of our diverse 180 currencies currently in the world would plummet to next to nothing. The value of something is often based on its rarity. We can see this principle in action with things like diamonds and caviar. By taking control of Namibia's diamond mines about a century ago, Ernest Oppenheimer turned what's actually a fairly common gemstone into the must-have symbol of wealth and luxury it is today. All he had to do was to only release a limited number of these gorgeous rocks to the public per year. Similar, caviar is the roe of the mighty sturgeon, a living fossil with many of its species now on the endangered list. It's like eating little baby tigers for the sake of saying you're rich. But before the sturgeon population tanked, their eggs were considered garbage to be left rotting on the beach, fed cheaply to pigs, and enjoyed by poor people only. Ah, the mighty influence of supply and demand. If everyone suddenly got their currencies equivalent to $1 million, the physical amount of money in the world would increase 30 times over. There's a reason the US government isn't just printing more money to pay off the hefty debts they owe other countries. More money means that money is worth less than it was before. So if we all get $1 million, the cost of living goes way up and the value of a dollar goes way down. But perhaps the least thought consequence would be disease. Didn't your mother ever tell you not to put money in your mouth? Well, that's because money is dirty, and not necessarily in the way you think. Well, maybe a little. A study in New York found that money is covered in bacteria from people's mouths, pets, and even fecal matter. Gross. If it needed to be any scarier, viruses can hitch a ride on the soft, porous surface for 48 hours, and when the researchers tested 10 $1 bills, 8 of them were laced with traces of cocaine. So money is covered in germs, pet dander, drugs, poop, and the flu. Great. If you don't die from the increased exposure, holding on to your money in such a poor economy would likely prove a treacherous task. Banks would become a regular target for robberies, and with so little value on the world's cash, it's unlikely they'd be obligated to replace it. For this reason, many might choose to keep their money at home, hidden in a jar or sewn into a mattress. But criminals would always find it, and the number of burglaries would increase exponentially. In today's world, someone is robbed every 13 seconds. That's about 4.5 a minute. Just imagine how high that number would be with so many desperate people trying to provide for themselves and their families. Between the heightened crime rate, an increased cost of living, and the almost laughably low value of the dollar, our world would be headed straight into a full-on, worldwide Great Depression. Everyone, rich or not, would have to get used to a seriously different way of living. Gas would be unaffordable to all but the most wealthy, which leaves us once again with bikes and animal-powered transportation. With populations cut down by disease, that leaves communities seriously isolated and puts a drain on environmental resources. Bikes would be fine, but feeding all the animals we'd be using would prove difficult and expensive for the individual. It's more likely that people would congregate and cooperate to form sort of community gardens and fields the entire town can use. More people would go back to raising their own livestock like rabbits or pigs, which can, in theory, be raised on grass and vegetable scraps. At this point, electronic money will have lost all of its value. Metal coins would be worth what they could be melted down into, and paper money would hold more use as a table stabilizer than something you buy groceries with. Bartering would likely become the new form of currency until the whole thing blows over. Yes, after all that, the economy would eventually even out again. But it would take decades, and no country would ever be the same. The amount of time and scientific and technological research lost alone would set humanity back far more than a few dollars. So with all that said, would getting a sudden lump sum of money make people happy? Nope, not really. It might be cool and exciting at first. You might spend, and finally quit that job you hate. But it wouldn't take long for the world's economy to tank, and that would mean big trouble for individual countries. With prices up and resources down, the cost of living would be more than most people could manage. And with all those physical dollar bills changing hands, the risk of disease would increase. With the population cut, the crime rate would skyrocket and humanity would fall. Let's hope none of that ever happens. So what do you think? Did you gain a better understanding of what would happen if everyone got $1 million? Do you think the world would be better off? Or would our world collapse? And what would you do with $1 million? If you enjoyed this video, then why not subscribe? Hit that bell icon as well so you're more likely to get notified of our noble answers to your burning questions. Also, if you have any questions you want answered, make sure to tell me in the comments section down below. And to keep filling your brain with regal knowledge, check out these videos here. They're magnificent.